talk to you today about do you own what you think you own? And so this is going to be a cautionary tale because the ownership issues that regard intellectual property are different than the ownership issues in almost every other area. One of those I would think of as being real estate, but generally we have some special issues when we have intellectual property that we have to deal with the ownership issues for. You know, one of the first things we're going to talk about here is legal due diligence. And that is because when we have a service-based business, we have a business that is based on our expertise. The assets in our business are intellectual property assets. So yes, we have monitors that may or may not work, and and we have printers that absolutely do not work. But mostly our most valuable assets is our intellect and our intellectual property. And so when we think about building on top of that intellect, let's say we want to create an IP-based strategy where we are using our intellect to create products such as a course or a licensing program that we'll talk about specifically here, or maybe even software. We are building on top of uh, those assets that we want to make sure that we own 100% of, and that so we don't run into problems later. So, how do we know what we own in intellectual property? Intellectual property are creatures of the law, unlike a car or land. So we, in order to find out what we own in them, we have to do legal due diligence. And what legal due diligence does is it tracks the ownership of a piece of intellectual property from its creation to its current owner. And so we call this, following the chain of title. So intellectual property has to be created by a human. At least now, there may be some artificial intelligence, but let's just say that intellectual property is all created by a human, whether it is the human who writes something, the human who paints something, the human who designs something. We always start with the human. And let's take, for example, video. So when you have a video, there's many elements of intellectual property in it. One, we have a script that it's based on. Two, we have the actors who appear on screen, and so we have their faces and their voices are their own. We have the photography. There's a cinematographer who's holding the camera. We may have music, so there's the origins of the music. Maybe there's even some archival footage in there. So we have that archival footage. All of those elements have intellectual property rights attached to them. And in order to be able to exploit that video, we need to have the rights to each of those elements. You can't just have the bundle. The bundle is made up of individual intellectual property rights.